Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPad 9th generation and see how this particular iPad holds up in 2024, at least in the middle part of 2024. Now, nothing super insane has changed with this particular device. We've already done so many videos on this thing throughout this whole entire year, but I will definitely tell you, in my personal opinion, these particular devices are still very, very good. Apple really did a good job with the iPad 9 in my personal opinion. And although this isn't like the best iPad of all time, I do think this, for the most part, still makes a lot of sense for people to buy. And I would probably recommend the average person that, if you want to go and buy one of these particular iPads, 100% go for it. I do think they're very good options, and throughout their whole entire lifespan, they're still going to be holding up very, very well for the most part. So if you want to pick up this iPad, links are down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same exact time. On the outside of the iPad 9, like I said before, nothing super crazy has changed yet. This thing still holds up and looks very, very good. You're getting that 10.2-inch panel on the front, which I still think looks very good. And if you're going through and buying a certain panel or buying a certain device, I like the fact that this thing looks and performs the way it does, because it is actually a very good looking device when it comes down to it. The panel itself, although it's still 60 Hz, nothing super crazy, it's still a good looking panel. The big difference though is that we did end up seeing that this iPad ended up getting discontinued with hardware sales. So this iPad is no longer being sold brand new anymore. Within the last month, that's kind of what happened. We got not a new iPad generation, but we did get the iPad 10th generation going down in price. So this is one thing that's kind of a bigger deal, I would say, for some people. So if you're wanting to go ahead and buy an iPad that's going to be supported with software and everything, this is still going to be fine. But if you're trying to go and buy an iPad that basically has a future ahead of it in terms of hardware and buying one in the brand new market, you may not be able to do that here. So just kind of keep that in mind in the back of your head as well. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but just one of those things to keep in mind here. You're still getting a lightning port, single camera setup on the back left, and overall it's still a very good looking device. I still think this thing holds up very well. And I do think if you're going through and buying a certain iPad, I think the exterior of this thing holds up very well. The only big thing that we've seen recently is that for the most part, this thing is not being sold brand new by Apple. So if you wanted to buy a brand new device, unfortunately, this thing is not going to be able to kind of give you that type of capability. So just kind of keep that in mind. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but just one of those things to kind of keep in mind there. So from that particular perspective, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. In terms of cameras, like I said before, 4K on the back, 1080p on the front, it still holds up fairly well for the most part. And for the most part, we've talked about the camera so much throughout the last year, so I don't think we need to hit on it here. The Apple Pencil support is still the only thing that kind of gives me the biggest gripe. I feel like, this thing should have gotten Apple Pencil 2 support or something like that, but even then it's not the biggest deal and we're kind of used to it by now. So that right there, again, not the biggest deal in the world or anything. On top of that, this particular device is still supported with software. It's probably still going to be getting software support on iPadOS 18 as well. So that's a really, really nice thing that you don't have to worry about this particular device like not getting the next generation of software. This thing is still supported with software and it's still going to be here for it's probably going to be here for like another 2 years, hopefully another 3 years. In terms of software, you have really nothing to worry about there either. And finally, in terms of performance, this thing still has the Apple A13 Bionic chip inside of it. And although it doesn't have like the most amount of RAM of all time, it still is a very good performing device in a lot of ways. And I do think from that particular perspective, you're going to be getting a really, really good performing device, especially when it comes down to that whole entire performing, perspective too. So I do think for the most part, Apple did a really, really good job with the iPad 9th generation. And I still think in so many different ways, this iPad is still worth buying. I think it's a very good device. I think it's still worth purchasing. And the only thing that I would recommend doing is that if you find an iPad 10 for maybe like a little bit more expensive, like if it's like $50 or maybe even $100 more expensive, I would probably just recommend buying the iPad 10th generation at this point. I think the iPad 9 is great, but you're getting, like a little bit of an outdated design. You're getting like a home button on the front and things like that, which can be kind of annoying for some people. But I do like the iPad 9. I still think it's worth buying, but just know that the iPad 10, is only slightly more expensive, and that one might make a little bit more sense for people to go ahead and purchase. So when it comes down to that kind of covers it up here. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.